So hello everyone. So you can hear me?
Hello, Wahid. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello, Professor Ganesh.
Hello.
So hello everyone. My name is Weijie and I'm the secretary of the IEEE YP Montreal section, and we are glad to host this event with you everyone. So the event is co-organized by the Orthogonal Time Frequency Space Satellite Mega-Constellations Space Air-Ground Integrated Communications in IEEE Computer Society, IEEE YP Ottawa section, IEEE Pseudo branch of INRS, and it is co-sponsored by SAGI. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over the microphone to Professor Ganesh to introduce our speakers today. And Professor Ganesh, I will co-host you now, I think.
Wait, do you prefer we wait for until 9 o'clock? And introduce.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps we'll have more participants.
Oh, definitely. People are still joining, so I will co-host you, and
Okay.
our
Perfect.
other speakers, I think they have already joined us. So I have co-host you and Professor Halim now for this event.
Wait, perhaps I can introduce Professor Halim Yanık-Ömeroğlu and welcome him to the stage. First of all, welcome everybody for joining us. This event is co-organized by Orthogonal Time Frequency Space OTFS Special Interest Group of Space and Satellite Communications and Satellite Mega-Constellations. In addition to that, we are also technically co-sponsored by Space Air-Ground Integrated Communications in WTC. So we have a wide range of audience participants. Thank you for tuning in. We will have two talks today by Professor Wong-Peng Wu and Pu Yuan. And we also invited Professor Halim Yanık-Ömeroğlu to give the opening remark. And before I invite Professor Halim Yanık-Ömeroğlu, I would also like to thank Professor Weijie Yuan being extremely instrumental in organizing this. And again, thanks for tuning in. Now, I would like to introduce Professor Halim Yanık-Ömeroğlu with a very short biography because it may take longer than the 5 minutes we have scheduled to read the full biography. I have been fortunate to collaborate with him very closely for the last few years, and before that taking courses from him. He is a professor at Carleton University in Canada, and his research interests cover 5G plus networks extending to 6th generation. He's a fellow of IEEE, Engineering Institute of Canada, Canadian Academy of Engineering, and he is a distinguished speaker for IEEE Communications Society and Vehicular Technology Society. Thanks for participating, Halim Hocam. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Güneş. Thank you, Wahid, and all organizers. It is a great pleasure indeed to be making the welcoming remarks. I have 5 quick remarks, quick but very important. The first one is that obviously satellite communications has a very long and rich history. It is not a new field. However, the entire field until recently has been a kind of a niche area. For instance, the largest satellite constellation today we have, largest meaning by the number of subscribers, it is Iridium Next, and it has about 1.5 million customers. Second remark, as we all know, this is changing very fast. There is interest in this area from very many different angles, not to mention the great success of Starlink in the popular media as well. As technical people, we are also aware the great amount of activity in 3GPP in this area. It is to be noted, though, 3GPP emphasis, at least in the near future, in the upcoming releases, the focus is on 2 scenarios. One of them is IoT. In that case, since the rate is small, a low received power is sufficient. Therefore, IoT devices can connect to satellites, often delay-insensitive traffic, intermittent transmissions are possible. And the second scenario is backhauling. For instance, if in a remote region, there is a 5G base station, users can connect to the base station with their smartphones through 5G air interface, and then the base station is backhauled through a satellite or the satellite network. The third remark, satellite communications and networking has indeed much, much bigger potential. The holy grail of satellite communications and networking is direct connectivity to an unmodified smartphone. The reason is obvious. There are maybe close to 10 billion smartphones today, or mobile phones of various types. That is, we are talking about a customer pool 3 to 4 orders of magnitude bigger than Iridium Next customer pool, which is just about 1 million subscribers. So it is really the job of our community to make the advances in various fronts so that perhaps in 2030s, we will have this direct connectivity to smartphone, and that will enable an integrated terrestrial satellite and perhaps even aerial network architecture, which will be unprecedented. The fourth remark is just a side note. It is not accidental that the world's two most richest persons, Bezos and Musk, they are in this area. It is again not accidental that they are investing in this area, they are betting in this area. Clearly, there are great opportunities in space, not only in research, but in entrepreneurship as well. The fifth and final remark, this area is truly multidisciplinary. Once again, it is not accidental that today's event is hosted by a number of special interest groups within ComSoc, including Satellite and Space Technical Committee, as well as Wireless Technical Committee. However, within IEEE, there are many other societies which are interested from different angles, interested in this paradigm. Just naming a few, Broadcast Technology Society, Antennas and Propagation Society, and for sure, Aerospace and Electronic Systems Society. So the organizers of this event should, at a convenient point, be in touch with those societies beyond ComSoc as well. As a matter of fact, satellite communications and networking ecosystem, in this ecosystem, there are players, big players outside IEEE. This is interesting to note because when it comes to research in IMT networks, those are the terrestrial networks generations of mobile technology, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, IEEE is very strong in that domain when it comes to research as well as engineering. But satellite ecosystem is different. There are other players, there are non-IEEE big conferences, platforms. Just one example is European Space Agency. There are many activities happening around ESA. So I'm making this as a positive comment. There is big room for growth. Our community leaders within IEEE in this area, like Professor Güneş Karabulut Kurt, should also reach out to non-IEEE players to increase the footprint of IEEE, but also to learn and collaborate with colleagues in those platforms. With that, I conclude, and it is back to Güneş. Thank you.
Thank you, Halim Hocam, for the important remarks. We have been taking notes on our side. Now, then I will then introduce our first speaker. And our first speaker is Professor Yongpeng Wu from Shanghai Jiaotong University. Sorry about my pronunciation if it's not correct. The title of his talk will be Random Access with Massive MIMO-OTFS in LEO Satellite Communications.
Okay, okay.
Professor
Okay,
Wu,
thank
let
you.
me just introduce your biography very briefly. Professor Wu received the Bachelor of Science degree in Wuhan University and PhD degree in Communications and Signal Processing with the National Mobile Communications Research Laboratory, Southeast University, Nanjing, China. And he's currently a tenure-track associate professor with the Department of Electronic Engineering in Shanghai Jiaotong University. He is awarded a very prestigious Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship in 2014, the Excellent Doctoral Thesis Award of China Communication Society in 2016, the Exemplary Reviewer Award in IEEE Communication Letters in 2017, and many other awards following that. He is currently serving as an editor of IEEE Wireless Communications, IEEE Transactions on Communications, and Communication Letters, and he has been symposium chairs in various conferences. So we are very happy to have you here, Professor Wu. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introductions, and also thank you very much for Professor Kamikuru's very wonderful introductions. Okay, also, and thank for Weijie for inviting me for this talk. Now I can share my slides, right? Okay. Can you see the slides?
We can see. Can you make it full screen, Professor Wu?
Yes. Okay. Is that okay? Is now
yes,
full
it's
screen,
perfect.
Right?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you again for Professor's wonderful introductions and for inviting me to this for inviting me for this speech. So I'm Yongpeng Wu from Department of Electrical Engineering, Shanghai Jiaotong University. The topic of my speech today is a random access with a massive MIMO-OTFS in LEO satellite communications. Okay, the content of this report mainly comes from the following papers. It's a recent accepted IEEE papers. We also post these papers online on archives. So for the details of this paper, you can find it on the archive. And the main contribution of this paper is, there are two main contributions. First is to identify the two-dimensional burst block sparsity in the channel matrix when the MIMO-OTFS is adopted for satellite communication. And second is a proposed pattern coupled sparse-based learning and generalized approximate message passing to explore this 2D sparsity. Okay, the talk of my report consists of the following parts. First, I will introduce some simple background of this random access in satellite communications, and then we will introduce some SISO OTFS satellite communications models, and then next we will discuss the random access with MIMO-OTFS. And then next, we will give our pattern coupled sparse-based learning algorithms, and we will show some examples. And finally, it comes with our summaries. First, for the background, we know the massive machine type communications, MMTC, is one of three typical scenarios in both 5G and 6G. And from 5G, we know the key difference is comparing to the 4G, is like we need to move from only human to human communications to machine communications. And that's why MMTC is very important for 5G and beyond wireless communication networks. And also there are many Internet of Things applications which needs MMTC technologies. And we need to enable massive IoT devices to access this wireless communication networks, like, for example, like the smart healthcare, smart home, smart manufacturing, and smart transportations. Like this virus scenarios, we need this massive MMTC communications. And for MMTC, there are some typical characters or properties for a typical MMTC or IoT networks. And the first, it is a massive, we know it's massive communication. So if the number of devices in the networks is huge, the sensors is huge, it may have a huge potential devices or sensors that in the networks that need to that can communicate. And the second important properties is like that, but not all these sensors or devices will communicate simultaneously in the same time. The transmission is like hierarchical transmissions, which means like there are a lot of devices in potential devices in the networks, but only in one time of communications, only parts of or small parts of the devices are active. They're active users. They will transmit, and when they transmit, they may be transmitted for a very short time, and then next it will go to inactive. And for next time transmission, another kind of sensors is when they need to transmit, then become active. So among the huge potential devices, only a small group of users are active during one time of transmission. So this is the second important properties of MMTC communication. And third one is like that for MMTC, because the transmission maybe it's a very short. There are a lot of devices but transmitting very short messages. So the low latency and low latency and the low power consumption is very important for MMTC, because there are huge sensors, but this sensor they are very cheap. They cannot be very expensive sensors. So for these sensors, they are very sensitive to the power consumptions and also transmission latencies. So for MMTC, normally we need low latency and low power consumption requirement. This is third properties. And finally, and it's very important, like for MMTC, normally we do not like our human mobile phone communication. We are transmitting a very long package and long data packages. For MMTC, maybe for the sensor, they are monitoring environment. So we just need to report some basic monitoring parameters. So the transmitter maybe just tens of or hundreds of bits, a very short package transmissions. So short package is a very important properties of MMTC scenarios, communication scenarios. And so due to this properties, so from MMTC, normally we use ground-free random access mechanisms. The ground-free random access offers the possibilities to decrease the access latency for MMTC. And it's normally a ground-free transmission strategy is normally like this 3 structures. First, each users each devices or the sensors owns a unique non-orthogonal preambles, and each active device, when it wants to transmit, it just transmit a preamble and data directly. We do not need the base stations or other things to coordinate it like these users. or to have some scattering. There's no scattering here. Just if each sensor devices, when he wants to transmit, he just transmit. He first transmit the preambles and then transmit the data, and the base stations or the receivers utilize the received preambles to detect the active devices and estimate the corresponding channels. Because as we mentioned before, like for MMTC, the very important properties is like it has a huge potential devices, but the real active devices at each transmission is only a small part, a small group, a small portion of these potential devices. So for the base station, the first thing he needs to do is to detect which devices are active at these transmissions and estimate the corresponding channels of these devices. Okay, for the satellite communications, we know. So the satellite communications normally has a very wide range area coverages. So many sensors and actuators are normally distributed over very wide areas without territorial access networks. For example, like the environment monitoring or emergency management, we have a lot of sensors. We'll have a wide area distributions. And for these scenarios, I think satellite communications, especially the low Earth original LEO satellites, are very suitable for this kind of machine type communications, because the LEO satellites are with relatively low propagation delays, low path losses, and flexible elevation angles, and could provide a very promising solutions for this massive machine type communication or IoT service. Okay, but the challenges in the LEO satellite communication, there are two main challenges. First is like the satellites, we know it has a high mobility, especially for LEO satellites. So it will result in a time varying channels and also a large Doppler shift. For example, up to 41 kHz, when the carrier frequency and amplitude are 2 gigahertz and 600 kilometers, we can calculate like the Doppler shift is 31 kilohertz, which is a very large Doppler shift. Also, the satellite communication, it has a long delays. It up to 3.9 3.6 microseconds when the elevate angles and altitude are 30 degrees and 600 kilograms. Well, so the one's transmission, it requires 3.6 milliseconds for one transmissions. So this is our two challenges for LEO satellite communications when it want to providing IoT services or massive machine type communication service. So I like to pose these issues. A promising solution is to use the OTFS modulations. We know that like by using OTFS modulations, we actually transform the signals in time frequency domain to delay and Doppler domains. So we have a time independent channels, and also we only require in delay Doppler domain, we only require less parameters to describe the channels. And also here in this domain, we are more robust to large Doppler spread and delay spread. So for the previous work for ground-free random access, so the approximate message passing algorithm and the variation Bayes interference were proposed to perform the joint device active detection and channel estimation. And also some generalized MMV AMP algorithm were proposed by exploiting the sparsities in angular domain when massive MIMO is adopted. And also considering a small range of frequency shift and the delays. Some spread GAMP was proposed. For LEO satellite-based ground-free random access was considered. Well, the block fading channel is adopted and the channel gain is affected by a random phase rotation. But most of these previous schemes only consider the block fading channels, and subsequently the time variation, the multipath propagations, and the Doppler shifts, which may occur in satellite communication scenarios, will be considered in our work. Okay, first let's see some the basic model for SISO OTFS model. So for SISO cases, the signaling in the time frequency domain can be written as follows. We have OFDM-based OTFS modulation. Actually, we use the Heisenberg transform. And then these signals and the channel, we model the channel as with a live offsite and plus some multipath fadings. And for receivers, we use a Weijie transform. It's a kind of match filters. And by using the ISFFT and SFFT transform, then we have alternatively channel representations of the follows. Well, the delay and Doppler taps can be described here. And in this case, we have a basic input and output relationship in the delay and Doppler domains for SISO OTFS signals. And for SISO OTFS systems, when the time duration of the cycloprefix is beyond the maximal delay of all passes, then the input-output relationship in the time Doppler domain of this OTFS signal is given by the following expressions. Okay, then next we extend this result to the MIMO random access with MIMO-OTFS scenarios. And when MIMO is used, now we know that the scenario becomes a little complicated. We will have a time, Doppler, and space. We have a 3-dimensional domains, and the channel in the delay, Doppler, and space domains can be expressed as follows. And the channel in the delay, Doppler-angle domains, when we perform a 2-dimensional DFT along the space domain, so will be written as follows. And then in particular, this we have a 3D domain sparsities, this which is important for massive MIMO channel properties, and the channel has a dominant elements, which what we mean by 3-dimensional sparsity, which means that the channel has dominant elements only if there's the following conditions. For example, like this one, this is a pilot patterns for these transmissions. Like assume the channel has a finite support along the delay domains, and then also a required guard length is larger than the maximal delays. And the pilot of each devices are complete. We can see completed overlap in the delay-Doppler domains. And the received pilot in the delay, Doppler, and angular, these three domains can be written when across the channel can be written as follows. And we can write this as a matrix form. We can write this as a matrix form. And we have some assumptions. The first assumption is residual delays is small enough, which it can be pre-compassionated at the devices. And also the carrier spacing is large enough. Then we have approximations, which can be written as follows. Well, H and the phase rotations is approximated by some all-one matrix. And what we mentioned before, like that for this three dimensions, the sparsity is very important for the channel matrix. And we can have at least two-dimensional sparsities as follows. Like due to the user activity has a sparsity. So the sparsity due to the user activity with only three active users can be seen as follows. Like only there are a lot of potential users, but only three users are active at this time. So they have a user sparsities. Also, for massive MIMO channel, we know it has a sparsities in angular domain. This is when in angular domains, in this domain, we may have some also sparsities. Also, in jointly, we can have a sparsity in delay-Doppler-angle domain with two active users like this one. So the white one is 0. Only the colored one in green and in the red, they have values. So we can see a two-dimensional sparsity for this when we use OTFS in massive MIMO satellite communication scenarios for random access. So the channel, in general, the channel matrix shows the two-dimensional bursty block sparsities due to the three-dimensional sparsity of the channel in the time, Doppler, and angular domains. And to explore these sparsities, we propose a patterned coupled sparse Bayes learning method. And we use cross-correlation based Gaussian pioneers. Like this is an example of the sparsity patterns like feature 8. For one users, we know that non-zero elements are represented by green blocks and other elements are 0. So we can see this is a sparse patterns for only one user in delay and Doppler domain. And so we can use some cross-correlation based Gaussian primaries and consider both its neighbors and its own local parameters by utilizing the pattern coupled hyperparameters. And we explore this 2D burst block sparsity of the channel matrix to design an algorithm to detect the active user and estimate its channel. And by using the primary distribution of the channel and some hierarchical primer for the local hyperparameters, we can design an MMSE estimation of the channels. Well, the likelihood function can be expressed as follows, and the primary distribution based on the MMSE estimation can be written as follows. And for the updates, for the noise precision updates, we can use the primary of this theta, and we use EM algorithms for to update some statistic parameters, such as the noise parameters. And then we have an optimal solution. For the EM updates, during updates, we know the original, the exact expression is difficult to solve analytically, so we can use some suboptimal solutions to examine the optimal conditions. Well, the simulation shows this suboptimal solutions performs near optimally. And we can estimate the support of the edge by a binary hypothetical testings like this. And we can set up a threshold for the LLR testings, which is equivalently as follows, and which will, the epsilon is determined by the Newman-Pearson levels. And then we can also update the estimate supportive of channel H and the B, and also then detect the active devices. And also here we need the original algorithm needs some matrix inversions, which will increase the operation complexities. So then we can use some covariance-free method to transform the matrix inversions to solving some linear equations, then to avoid the matrix inversions and have to reduce the complexities. And then we have this following, based on the previous results, then we can have the following propositions. Let S be any square matrix, and we can prove that. The estimator SD is an unbiased estimate of the original diagonal elements of S. Okay, then we have our completely two-dimensional sparse-based learning algorithm. We can update it, the parameters based on the previous equations we see, and also here we use the factorized matrix, so to avoid the matrix inversions. And also to further reduce the complexities, we can also design some low complexity sparse-based learning algorithm with GAMP. Well, the fully factor post-real distribution of H is described as follows, and the primary mean and variance can be written as follows. And then here we can use for a fixed pattern coupled hyperparameters to further decrease the. We can fix the pattern coupled hyperparameters to further decrease the complexity. Also, we can use a two-dimensional convolutional based EM algorithms to update it to do our parameter updations. So the two-dimensional convolutional operations will reduce the complexity, the calculation complexity significantly. So this is our low complexity algorithm based on the two-dimensional convolutional sparse-based learning and the GAMP. Okay, then we show some experimental results. The parameter of our simulation is like we use the carrier frequency with 2 GHz carrier frequency, and the sub-carrier spacing is 313, and the size of OFDM symbol is 256 and 15. Also, the length of CP is 85, and we assume there are various of number of satellite antennas from 4 to 144, and also the number of user antenna is only 1, and number of live site is 1, and non-off site is 3. Also, the residential delay is from 0 to 0.8, and the Doppler shift is, as I mentioned, is from negative 41 to positive 41 kHz, and the directional cosine along the y and x Z size and also the region fact. Some of these parameters are from the 3GPP, 3GPP satellite standards. Okay, we have some two benchmark algorithms. The first one is a sparse-based learning GMP algorithms, which do not only assume a single Gaussian parameter is adopted, which means the channel assume all the channel parameters is a Gaussian Rayleigh distribution. It does not explore the sparsity of the channel. And also the GMMV-AMP, which only explore the one-dimensional sparsity of the channel, which is the sparsity in angular domain. But our algorithm actually explore the two-dimensional sparsity of the channel. Okay, for these simulations, we can see that first the green curves are proposed two-dimensional sparse-based learning algorithm achieves the best performances, and the blue curves, the two-dimensional convolutional-based algorithm, the low complexity two-dimensional convolution-based algorithms outperforms only one-dimensional convolution-based updates. And also, when we compare our proposed convolutional sparse-based learning algorithms, we can see this curve, these features, the yellow curves, although it is a low complexity algorithm, but the convolutional sparse-based GMP algorithm achieves best performances comparing to the GMMV-AMP algorithm and the sparse GMP algorithms. This is because we use the two-dimension channel sparsities. So we have the best performances. Also, when we compare the performances with different number of antennas, we can see that when antenna size is from 4 to 144, we can see still again the yellow curves are proposed convolutional sparse-based learning algorithm achieves the best performances and outperforms the two benchmarks, the sparse-based learning GMP algorithm and the GMMV AMP algorithms. Also, under different pilot ratios, and we have some comparisons again. We can see that convolutional sparse-based learning GMP algorithm achieves best performance and outperforms the two partners, the sparse-based learning GMP and GMMV AMP algorithms, when we have different pilot overhead or different pilot less. Also, this is a curve for the error probability rates for these three algorithms. We can see that in the error probability rate, normally the system in the error probability rate, the system can tolerate it, like minus -2, 10-2. That like this error probability rate, we can see that again our proposed convolutional sparse-based learning GMP algorithm achieves best performance comparing to the sparse-based learning GMP algorithm and the GMMV and AMP algorithms. We have a obvious error probability improvement. Okay, to summarize, we can LEO satellite communication are remarkably effective by both the time-selected fadings and frequency-selective fading due to its high mobilities. So the LEO satellite enabled ground-free random access with massive MIMO-OTFS is investigated in our report. And we propose a two-dimensional sparse-based learning factorialized machine metrics and convolutional sparse-based learning GMP algorithms mainly to explore the three-dimensional channel sparsities in the delay-Doppler-angle domains when the OTFS modulation is used for the massive MIMO satellite communication scenarios. And experimental results demonstrated that our proposed algorithms outperforms its conventional methods. Okay, this is the some references which are related to our this reports. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Professor Wu, for the excellent talk. And also, Professor Weijie is also with us. So I think he may say a few words as well. But first, I see a question in the chat box.
Okay.
So this is from Xigong Liu. The two questions are indicated. First, uplink signals from massive IoT device within one geographically similar area may experience correlated channel in the point of view from either time frequency domain or delay Doppler domain, which may cause serious interference. How did you resolve this issue in your work?
Okay. Yeah. That's a good question. I think in our work we don't consider like this, because we assume like maybe the coverage is very wide, so maybe the devices they have some distances, so we do not consider this like correlations between the two different devices. But I think this is a very good question, and we should consider it in the future, because for our work, I think this is, we just want to first investigate it, like how can we use OTFS in the satellite communication, massive MIMO satellite communications. So we just do some first studies. So we use some very simple assumptions. But I think this assumption is the question raised is very good question, and we should consider that in the future work. Yeah.
Thanks, Professor. Well, yeah, that is there's really a lot of additional things that to be done, but yes, your work is really pioneering in this field.
Yeah. Yes.
So in the I'll continue with the second question by the same researcher. OTFS may have high signal processing delay. However, the propagation delay of satellite systems is also high. So in this case, is the latency tolerable?
Yeah, that's right. That's also a very good question. I agree, like OTFS and also the propagation delay is high. So that's why we need to use ground-free mechanisms. So we do not, so ground-free is a good mechanism to reduce the delays. We do not need to do some coordinations between the users, like when user want to access the network. It will, for ground-based, first they need to ask some permissions, and then the base station receive these permissions, and then to allocate some resource to the user, and then use transmit. This have several terms. But like for massive access for ground free, so the user, when it wants transmit, it just transmit. I think so. This mechanism can reduce some delays. So that's why, especially in IoT, like or massive MMPC, so we need to use ground free to reduce the delay. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you, Professor. And following question from Anand Mehrotra is also related. In this question, it's asked, can you please comment on the complexity of the proposed algorithm?
Yeah, we know the ML detection has a very high complexity, but like we use AMP, approximate message passing, so it has some faster implementation or faster implementation algorithms. So the complexity will be reduced, like because we are mainly use the AMP structures to reduce the complexity, comparing to like the ML detector, right? The ML detector, you need to search the entire space, so the complexity is prohibitable. We cannot accept it. So that's what we use AMP structure to reduce the complexity. Yeah,
I think that's also very practically relevant in terms of future implementations, hopefully in space. There are 3 more questions, Professor Wu. I'll like to address them, ask them. Another question is by Yao Ge. How can we estimate the channel delays and Doppler shifts, especially for the fractional part as the channel delays and Doppler shifts when they are not on the grid?
Yes. But yes. There are some ways to like. I know Professor Xi Gao from Southeast University has recently they have a paper to estimate the channel delay and Doppler delay. I think it's based on gradient search. I think it's on gradient search or exhaustive search we can separate the channel delay and Doppler delay into several parts or some small part, and then we form a matrix and then to do some search, and then to estimate the channel delay and Doppler delay. So there's a recent paper by Professor Xi Gao from Southeast University to do this. And if you are interested, I can send you the paper. You can send me an email, and then I can give you the paper for details. Okay.
Perfect. And another question is how to arrange the preamble and data in the delay-Doppler domain for active devices.
No, first we have the preamble and data, and then we use OTFS to transform them to delay and Doppler domain. So like this one. Yeah, we have a normal data, and we have some pilots, and we have some data, and then before transmission, we use OTFS modulations to transform it to delay and Doppler domain. Yeah, like this.
Perfect. That question was from Xiang Wei, and now I'll want to the I'll take 2 more questions. One of them is asked by Basel. The LEO channel has a low coherence time. So how can we utilize pilots and data? Also, time division duplexing becomes very hard to maintain. Can you please comment on that aspect?
Yes. So, but here we only consider uplink. We do not consider downlink. So we need random access. So I think we not like the massive MIMO. When you do downlink, I think you mean when we do downlink. So we need to use TDD for uplink to estimate the channel, and then do the downlink beamforming. I think is that the question? But like here, we only consider uplink, just random access to estimate to detect the active user and estimate the channels. So we do not consider downlink. So I think so I think that's the case. So we do not need to use TDD to estimate the channel for the downlink beamforming. I think, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor. And there is one final question. If we use grant-free scheme, how to guarantee the orthometric preambles?
Or you mean orthogonal? Does that mean orthogonal?
Oh, this question is from JZJ. I think orthogonal.
Yeah.
Orthogonal.
Yeah, orthogonal. Yes, yeah. I think this we do not need to orthogonal preambles. I think it's non-orthogonal. It's okay. Like normally we can use the Gaussian preambles from from the Gaussian distribution, the preambles from Gaussian distributions like this one. So it does not need to, you see, non-orthogonal preamble. So it does not require the preamble to be exactly orthogonal. But we can use the algorithm to detect. As long as each device has a unique non-orthogonal preamble, then we can, in the base station, we can detect the active user and elsewhere in the channels.
Okay, that's very interesting. And then the number of unique preamble, unique preambles would also determine perhaps the number of.
You can just use a simple Gaussian preambles. That's okay. Yeah.
Sounds good. And one last question that I'll take before passing the floor to Professor Weijie. How can we? This is from Xikong Yu, and the question is, how can be synchronization achieved when employing grant-free scheme in LEO satellite systems?
Yes. Synchronization is also it's very good question. Synchronization, I think, is a very good. It's very important issue actually in general. Grant-free based random access schemes. So as I mentioned, I think we need to use some method. Actually, we need to use some method to do the synchronizations. As I mentioned, like the Professor Xi Gao recently has a paper which had designed a unique method, like to actually say exhaustive search. As I understand, that method is like to divide both the time and frequency delay into several parts, and then to do exhaustive search, and to find the time delay and frequency offset, and then to compare it. So that's very good question. And if you are interested, you can send me email. Then I can email you the papers. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Professor Wu, for the excellent talk. And as Professor Wu mentioned, if you have other questions, please feel free to send me an email. Thanks again, Professor Wu, for giving this talk.
Okay.
Now,
thank you very much for your for hosting this speed report. Okay.
It's our pleasure, Professor Wu. And I would also like to notify, if you couldn't log in, we apologize. We have a cap on the number of participants, 200. So for our next week's seminar, we'll resolve this issue. So I apologize about that. Now, to introduce our second speaker, I would like to invite Professor Weijie Yuan to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Gunas, for hosting the first talk, and I'm so sorry I'm a little late. And I would like to express my thanks to Yongpeng for your wonderful talk, and thank you so much. So the second talk will be given by Dr. Pu Yuan from Vivo Technology. So yeah, I have made a slide. So Dr. Pu Yuan will introduce the orthogonal time frequency space from the system design perspective. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Yuan. So Dr. Yuan is currently with the Vivo Communication Research Institute, Beijing, China, and as a research and standardization engineer. Prior to that, he was with 2012 Laboratories Huawei Technology, Shanghai, China. So Dr. Yuan received the bachelor degree from the Tianjin University and the master as well as the PhD degrees from the Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. His current research focus includes delay-Doppler domain modulation and its standardization-oriented design. So let's welcome Dr. Yuan and for his talk. So Dr. Yuan, are you online?
Yeah, I'm online. Can you hear me?
Okay. So, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thanks. I'm Yuan Pu, and I'm currently with the Vivo Communication Technologies. We're making cell phones. Before the talk, I would like to express my thank you to the IEEE ComSoc and IEEE YP Montreal for organizing this wonderful event. And and I'm honored to have this chance to communicate with all the friends in academic and industry. And now I will start to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, maybe some delay.
Okay, all good.
So I will close my webcam. Okay, today's topic is about the system design perspective of the OTFS. The background image is the headquarters of our company located in Dongguan, China. So the content of today's topic is about the follows. First, I will introduce OTFS. First, I will have a brief introduction of the OTFS technology, including a review on the implementation issue and where does the gain of the OTFS come from. And then in the second or third part, I will introduce our work on the pilot design and the MIMO precoding in OTFS. At last, I will provide some initial results about our prototype. So the overview of OTFS. So OTFS can be implemented with flexibilities. It can be implemented as a precoder of OFDM, and also it can be implemented as a single carrier system. And OTFS is superior to the OFDM in high Doppler scenario for the following reasons. The first one is for the two-dimensional diversity gain. And the second one, I think, is the channel estimation gain. And OTFS is a potential candidate for the satellite communications for the following two reasons. First one is it has an outstanding performance on combating the Doppler brought by high mobility. Then, and the second one is the channel matrix in satellite communication is usually sparse, which can significantly reduce the receiver complexity. So this is the first implementation approach of OTFS. It is implemented as a precoder of the OFDM system. So the quantum symbols are first being mapped to a virtual delay-Doppler domain resource grid, then a 2D Fourier transform is applied to the quantum symbols and to convert it to the time frequency domain. And then it follows the conventional OFDM signal processing procedure to generate the time domain signal. So the good point of this implementation is it has a good backward compatibility, has less standard impact, and easy to coexist with OFDM. Using this implementation, actually in the time frequency domain, our conventional design in the 3GPP standard like synchronization, control channel design, linear precoding can be directly applied. And this is the single carrier implementation of OTFS. The two references are have some detail introduction on this implementation. So it has reduced the implementation flexibility, and you will have a flexible choice on the waveforms. And also the OOB interference can be reduced by the filtering. Then I will give our view on how the two-dimensional diversity of the OTFS waveform comes from. So suppose the bold capital X is the delay Doppler domain quantum symbol matrix, and bold capital S is the delay time domain symbol matrix, and it can be transformed from the bold capital X by IDFT along the Doppler dimension, like this, this matrix. And then if we and then delay time domain capital S can be vectorizing to form the time domain sequence, which is ready to be pulse shaped and transmitted on the RF. And so we have the following equation. It defines the relationship between the time domain sequence S and the vectorizing of the delay-Doppler domain quantum symbol matrix bold capital X. So if we look into detail of the time domains of the samples of the time domain sequence, actually we can see that every element of the time domain sequence S, it contains the information of all the quantum symbols mapping on the delay-Doppler domain matrix bold capital X. In this way, it achieves the time domain diversity, because the original information bits are spread in all the samples of the time domain sequence. And next, we analyze the diversity in frequency. So we can write the time domain signal in this form. It's the vectorizing of the delay time domain symbol matrix bold capital S. So the time domain sequence actually has a stagger structure. It can be written as the summation of these sequences, and each of the row of these sequences actually is the row of the delay time domain symbol set bold capital S by interpolate the several zeros between them. So if we look at the property of the Fourier transform, we know that interpolating zeros equivalent to the interpolating zeros in the time domain equivalent to the duplication in the frequency domain. And if we and also if we do the cyclic shift in the time domain, it's equivalent to the to multiply by some phase shift term in the frequency domain. So if we take the inverse discrete Fourier transform to the, I'm sorry, this should be DFT. If we take the DFT to the time domain sequence S, actually it is the in this form. It is actually the summation of the duplicated and the phase shifted version of each row of the delay-Doppler domain quantum symbol matrix bold capital X. And considering the exponential part, it is like a system with m by n subcarriers, and the samples on each subcarrier contains the information of a column vector of the delay-Doppler domain column symbol matrix, both capital X. So in this way, it achieves frequency domain diversity. So we know that the OTFS achieves the diversity within subframe, and the OFDM can only achieve the diversity within OFDM symbol. But we can increase the time domain diversity of OFDM by interleaving. So here we compare the performance of the OTFS with the interleaved OFDM. The to increase the time domain diversity. And the figure on the right is the frame structure of the OFDM subframe. The blue bullet is the demodulation reference signal for channel estimation. And here is the result of the comparison. We can see that has slightly improved the performance compared to the original one, but it is still be outperformed by the OTFS. This may be evidence on the diversity gain achieved by more diversity gain achieved by the OTFS over the OFDM. And for the next part, I will introduce some system design work on OTFS. The first one is the pilot design. So in conventional research of the OTFS, we usually adopt a pilot pulse located in the delay-Doppler domain surrounding by the guard symbols and then by the data symbols. And after coupling with the wireless channel, we can observe that some delay and the Doppler shifted versions of the pilot pulse, and we can use a power detector to capture the position of this pulse and find the delay and the Doppler. And usually to secure the power detection performance, usually we will power boost the pilot pulse for tens of dBs, comparing to the power of the data symbols. It will cause high PAPR in the time domain signal. Because actually, if we use the second approach to generate the time domain signal, there is only one IDFT processing on the delay on the Doppler domain, on the Doppler dimension. So we can see the samples on the same row with the pilot will have high power, and the ones on the same row with the guard symbol have low power. This will cause high PAPR in the time domain sequence. We can see there are high power samples periodically appears in the time domain sequence, and also it is reflected in the CCDF curve of the time domain sequence. To mitigate the high PAPR in the time domain sequence, we propose a sequence-based pilot design. Actually, we apply a pilot sequence along all the along all the delay tabs. So after the IDFT, we can see the power of the transformed samples are all keeping the same level of power. So in this way, we can reduce the KPR. So in the CCDF curve, the blue curve is the pilot sequence with data mapping, and the red curve is the pilot pulse with data. So it has a very large gap on the KPR. We cannot use simple energy detection if we adopt the pilot sequence. So we can use some, there is some requirement on pilot sequence. So first one is ease for detection. Then we need a sequence to have a high autocorrelation. And also we need them to be resilient to the interference. So we expect them to have low cross correlation. So many candidate sequences can be adopted. For example, M sequence, DC sequence, gold sequence, and so on. And these three sequences are also adopted by the 3GPP in for LTE and NR. This is the example of M sequence generator, which is used in our simulation. So the channel estimation of the pilot sequence can be concluded as a sliding, a cyclic shift, and a correlation. So if there is in this figure, there is three pulses with delay and a Doppler, with different delay and a Doppler. The received pilot sequence is shifted in Doppler and the cyclic shifted in delay. And for the two pulses with the same delay, the received pilots from the two pulses are superimposed. So we can find two peaks on this Doppler column, but with different delay values in the coordinate. And this is the detection algorithm, just as described in the previous page. The first step is the parse identification. This is actually to find all the delay Doppler pairs of the channel. Then the second part is the channel coefficient estimation. If there is only one delay tab corresponds to one Doppler tab, then we can apply a simple pointwise division to find the parse gain. But if multiple delay tabs corresponds to one Doppler part, we can construct linear equations to solve the parse gain. In this equation, the bold letter Y is the received. It is a received signal in the in one Doppler column, and the bold capital X is a matrix formed by the cyclic shifted pilot sequences with different shifted values. These values are equals to the delay value we find in the previous step. And in this way, we can calculate the channel coefficient. So if multiple delay tabs corresponds to one Doppler offset, then the estimated channel coefficient is degraded by not only the noise but also the interference term from from the signal from other pulses. So so in the paper we have analyzed the the distribution of the estimation error. and it is increased with the arrow, the estimation arrow power increase with the different parses P, and decrease with the number of the length of the sequence we use, the length is M. And here we provide some numerical result. The figure in the left is the normalized mean square error of the estimated channel matrix. We can see the proposed approach has a better performance than the pilot pulse approach using a power detector in high SNR. And this difference is also reflected in the symbol detection performance. It is slightly better than the conventional approach in high Doppler, in high SNR. And next, I will introduce our another work on the OTFS MIMO design. This work is the first one is when we first meet OTFS, we're thinking about to apply the MIMO pre-coding technique in the current standard to the OTFS to see if it works. So the bold capital W subscribed to TF is the time frequency domain linear pre-coding matrix. Actually, we can derive the relationship of the delay-Doppler domain pre-coding matrix based on the two-dimensional Fourier transform relationship. And this is the result. That means we can directly use the bold capital W subscribed to DD as the pre-coding matrix in the delay-Doppler domain. But when we apply the linear pre-coding to the OTFS, we find actually there is nearly no gain. This is the simulation result, and we compare the OTFS with the non-pre-coded OTFS with the OTFS with the pre-code cycling using the linear code book in the NR, and the performance is roughly the same. So we can conclude that no diversity gain brought by linear pre-coding for OTFS. And then we are seeking to apply other MIMO pre-coding scheme to OTFS to see if there is some gain. And this work is done by us and our collaborators in the university. It's a OTFS space-time code. So in this work, the space-time code is applied to OTFS with a rectangular pulse. And we design a transmit block that is a two transmit block within one subframe to guarantee the channel stationary. And also we design a pilot embedded design with guard symbols to elevate the interblock interference. And in the numerical result, we observe extra spatial diversity gain. This is the system diagram of the proposed scheme, illustrated by two transmit antennas. So actually, there is some previous work provides the OTFS space-time code design, but the previous work assumes the information signals are transmitted in two distinct subframes. Then you need to assume that the channel will be kept stationary within two subframes time. And we feel that this assumption is a little bit strong. So we propose that this scheme that two transmit blocks are within the same subframe. And also in previous work, the bi-orthogonal waveform is assumed, and we assume a practical rectangular pulse. So in this figure, the information symbols are divided into two parts, and is constructed to a multi-STC OTFS code word to be transmitted by the two antennas. Actually, the transmit code word is constructed in this way. In the OTFS-STC, the transmit code word is not only the conjugate, but also we need to do some permutation. And the P is the modified permutation matrix to to construct the rate 1 on the multi-STC OTFS. We have modified the matrix P because we considering the inserted pilot and the guard symbols. And the input-output relationship is as follows. And we can write down the equivalent form like the second equation. Then we are happy to see the form of the second equation because we can apply a MMSE equalizer based on the equivalent channel matrix. So the channel estimation based on the channel estimation is applied in this way. Look at the previous figure. Actually, in there is despite the different transmitted code word of the two antennas. Another difference is that we apply different pilot. Apply the pilot in different position in each transmitted block of the two antennas. In this way, we can do a channel estimation separately to measure the channel. So actually, in this way, we can do channel estimation to estimate the both capital H subscribe 1. This is the channel matrix of the first antenna, and another one, both capital H subscribe to 2 is the channel of the second antenna. Then we can reconstruct the equivalent channel matrix in this form, just using the applied this equation. And based on the equivalent channel, we can construct the MMSE equalizer like this, the second equation. So we compare the proposed OTFS-STC code with several other transmit diversity schemes. The first one is the repeat schemes. That is the two antennas just sending the same data and combine at the receiver. And also the CDD. The CDD is the data sent in different antennas using a random cyclic shifted version in delay dimension to add some diversity. And the third one is the conventional OFDM STC using the Alamonte code in frequency domain. we can see that the proposed approach outperforms all the other transmitted diversity schemes. And the last part of today's talk is about our work on the prototype. So the overview of the prototype is we use a PC server to generate the OTFS transmitted samples, and it also acts as a receiver for channel estimation, demodulation, and decoding. And we use a USRP to complete up and down conversion and AD and DA processing. And we use a channel simulator to generate the channels with various delay and Dopplers. And also we use a FPGA accelerator card to complete the synchronization and match the filtering work. This is the system diagram of the hardware of the OTFS prototype. So the most of the work is most of the transmitter and the receiver function is achieved by the PC server, including the encoding, modulation, resource mapping, and in the Doppler domain, and we use a Zark transform-based approach to convert the delay-Doppler domain symbols to the time domain samples. Then pulse shaping using a root-rise cosine pulse to generate the time domain signal. The time domain signal then pass through the FPGA accelerator card to the RF hardware. After digital to analog conversion, we use a channel simulator to simulate the air interface. The receiver processing includes matched filtering, synchronization, downsampling, and OTFS demodulation, symbol detection, and channel decoding. These are also achieved by the PC server. The table on the left is our system parameters, and this is the picture of our prototype. So we have evaluated several aspects of the performance of OTFS. The first one is the impact of synchronization. We can see that when the velocity is low, the performance of perfectly synchronized OTFS and imperfectly synchronized OTFS have similar performance. But when the velocity is high, the OTFS with imperfect synchronization will have the error flaw on the high SNR. It is both observed in the 120 kilometer per hour and 240 kilometer per hour. So we can conclude that loss of synchronization will cause error flaw in high speed, and we need to better synchronization to secure the performance. And also we compare the performance of the OTFS prototype with the simulation in MATLAB. Actually, we can see some performance gap between the two. This may be caused by the because we have slightly different implementation with doing a simulation and a prototype. In the simulation, we just follow the first approach of the OTFS. We use we implement the OTFS as a precoder of the OIDM. And in the prototype, because we have to fit the transmitted bandwidth with the hardware sampling rate. So we have to do upsampling and pulse shaping on the OTFS. So actually, we use the second approach, like a single carrier waveform to implement the OTFS. So because we add upsampling and filtering approach in the prototype, its performance are slightly better than in the simulation. And maybe the filtering improves the because we use routerized cosine waveform. It has a row of factors, so it slightly increased actually bandwidth of the data. So this is maybe the reason the performance in the prototype are slightly better. And also we know in the OFDM-like approach, it will have the outband emission problem, which may also degrade the performance. But when we apply a filtering, matched filtering on the received signal, we actually mitigate the OB interference. And also we use the channel simulator for the reason that because we need to simulate the high speed, and we don't have a real vehicle to do this to apply the high speed scenario. So we have to use a channel simulator. And we also have some test result using the air interface, and this simulation is based on the SISO setup with single transmitter antenna and single receiver antenna. We can see that because there is no Doppler here, the performance is pretty good. And also, currently our prototype cannot run a real time due to the complexity of the OTFS demodulation. Our decoding program is implemented by C programming language on a PC server with an Intel i9 processor. And it requires roughly 300 milliseconds to process 64 by 16 frame with QPSK and code rate 0.5 NRLDPC code, including all the steps of the receiver signal processing from matched filtering, synchronization to the symbol detection and channel decoding. And next, the conclusion of today's talk. The first is we believe that OTFS waveforms score over OFDM in high Doppler scenario. It is proved in our simulation. And the OTFS achieves better diversity gain and channel estimation gain in both analytical derivation and also in the simulation. The receiver complexity is the biggest barrier to its application to the next generation wireless communications. And also the coexistence design with OFDM should be considered to increase the chances of standardization. And for satellite communication system, if it is as a standalone system, you need not to consider the old system like OFDM. I think OTFS is a good choice. That's all for today's talk. And thank you, everyone. And if you have any question, please ask me freely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yuan. So thank you for your talk and especially for the share of your demonstration. So if you have any question, please feel free to write them in the chat. And currently, the Neil Baker has one question that when you mention the loss of performance due to imperfect synchronization, are you referring to the CSI estimation or something else?
Not a reference to the CSI estimation. Actually, because we use a channel simulator, actually we know how many passes we can find. If we do the synchronization right, we actually usually we can find all the channel passes. But if in the channel estimation, if we find a round number of passes, and we think it is a loss of synchronization, so we will abandon these frames in the we will drop these results when we do the when we draw the plot.
Okay, so yeah, Dr. Yuan, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the result of the imperfect channel estimation and imperfect synchronization and perfect synchronization are calculated from the same samples we receive, and for the plot of the perfect synchronization, we just drop the results, which which does not precisely find all the distinct delay passes. Because in the test, we find that if we loss of the synchronization, then the channel estimation will have a very big error, and it cannot identify correct passes, delay passes.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Yuan. So Professor Goodness have a question that she asked you to give some more descriptions about the channel simulator. Also, is it possible to use this prototype over a channel emulator in real time or near real time?
Actually, this is the one in the picture is the channel simulator. I think it is made by the Keysight company. Actually, we first I think the usage of the channel simulator like this. First, we choose the EVA model, channel model. It gives us a delay profile and Doppler delay profile and power profile, and we use some channels simulator like a JAX model or other model to generate the a sampled time domain channel. Then we use the generated time domain channel as an input of the channel simulator, and after some parameter adjustment, it will produce so-called the channel maybe like the one in the real world, and we use the output of the channel simulator to do our simulation. And this, because this prototype is the signal processing of this prototype is all done by the software, and also we do not spend much time on optimizing the code itself. For example, using the multi-core processing. So the processing time of this prototype is not that high. So you can see we need 300 milliseconds to process a single frame. So it cannot be used using the real-time processing or near real time. It cannot. But if we migrate all the signal processing to the FPGA approach, I think it may be achieves real-time processing. If we have time, maybe next step we'll do this work.
Yeah, okay. So I think here has a very similar question from Carlos Gomez. So Carlos asked, from the implementation perspective, which is the bottleneck of the processing chain? So, yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I think he just wants to know what is the bottleneck of the implementation.
Oh, the bottleneck. You mean the bottleneck of the processing speed, right?
Yeah, maybe. So Carlos asked from the implementation perspective. So I think it's something about the hardware.
Oh, hardware. Okay, I think it's the symbol detection. In our prototype, we just use the classic message passing algorithm proposed by, I think, Yi Hong and Emmanuel Viterbo, their team. So we think that we find that the message passing algorithm, the complexity is uncertain. It highly depends on the sparsity of the channel, and it usually spends tens of times comparing to the LDPC decoding. So I think the bottleneck is the symbol detection algorithm. If the friends in academic can develop a simpler channel detection algorithm, I think it won't be the bottleneck.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And so here's a question from Ziqiang. So Ziqiang asks that, will the synchronization error affect the detection performance in your prototype? And moreover, can you explain more why the prototype outperforms the simulation results?
Yeah, because the simulation is when we do the simulation, we just follow the approach. The first approach, we just assuming we are using a rectangular wave like IBM. So we just convert the signal to the delay time domain and then directly do vectorizing in a simulation. So we do not use we do not actually perform the pulse shaping in MATLAB, because if we perform upsampling and pulse shaping, the program will become extremely slow. But when we implement the prototype, because the RF hardware we use, I think it's a USRP, it has a fixed sampling rate. It cannot be adjusted, and we cannot use OTFS frame with such a huge data bandwidth, because I think it will exceed the capability of the processor. So we have to use OTFS signal with a narrower bandwidth. But when we go to the RF, we just upsampling and pulse shaping. Actually, we have extra step of upsampling and pulse shaping. And when we do pulse shaping, we use the root rise cosine pulse with a rolling factor of I think it's about 0.3 or 0.5, and actually the transmitted signal with because of the rolling factor, the transmitted signal has a larger bandwidth than the original one. So actually it occupies more bandwidth. So I think this is a key point to increase the performance in the prototype.
So can the simulation results using the same bandwidth occupied by the prototype? So perhaps that's more fair.
In theory, it can, but because we use a very large upsampling rate in the prototype, like 32 times, I think. In the MATLAB simulation, when applying such a big upsampling rate, the program will generate some error message, and we don't have a solution. So in the simulation, we do not use upsampling.
Oh, okay.
But we have compared the results of the original OTFS with the OTFS with smaller upsampling rate, like 4 times, and the performance is a little bit better, and maybe the performance gap will be increased when the sampling rate increases.
Okay, thank you. So one question from Danilo. So he asks that if the proposed pilot, what's the implication of this on bandwidth efficiency, because you are using a large number of data space?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Because to mitigate the PAPR, we sacrifice the pilot overhead, especially the guard symbol overhead. So I think this is the initial design. We can use some variations to save the overhead. I think to reduce the overhead, we can we have two approach. The first one is that we can redesign the frame structure. For example, we can reduce the number of M. It means reduce the resolution of delay, but increase the number of N. Then then we can reduce the overhead in this way. And also to mitigate the PAPR, actually we can also use the we do not need to fully occupy the delay dimension. For example, we can just use half of the delay dimensions to place our pilot sequence, but the other half we use all the resources to mapping the data. And in this design, the delay, the pilot sequence and the data may interfere each other in the received delay-Doppler plane, but we can use some algorithm like successive interference cancellation to mitigate the impact of the sequence to the data. And maybe this is the following work we'll try. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have maybe last two questions. So Di Jiang asked that the imperfect time synchronization are due to the high relative speed.
Maybe, I think, because actually when doing the synchronization, we don't know how to do synchronization in the delay-Doppler domain. So actually we adopted the conventional synchronization scheme directly migrated from the NR. So we adopted NR's synchronization signal block. So, you know, because the NRSSB, they have a limited bandwidth. So the synchronization accuracy is limited. So maybe in the high relative speed scenario, it cannot perform well. So for OTFS system, maybe we need some longer sequence to do the synchronization.
Oh, okay. So the last question from Michael. So to reduce the PAPR, did you try to use a hard mod precoder?
So
have you tried?
I have not tried, but I think that actually I think for the original OTFS waveform, if we do not apply a high power pilot pulse, it just have the similar PAPR as the OFDM system. The PAPR is simply brought by the Fourier transform. But actually this PAPR is brought by the high power pilot pulse. So I think to do the hard mod precoder, I think it can be maybe it can be applied in the time frequency domain. That means we have to use the first approach of the OTFS implementation. We first use a two-dimensional Fourier transform to convert the data and the pilot from the delay-Doppler domain to the time frequency domain. Then we may use the apply the hard mod code to average the power distribution. Maybe I did not try.
Okay, thank you. So thanks again, Dr. Yuan, for your impressive talk. So I think we're done today. So maybe Professor Halim, could you also do the closing remark? Or goodness?
Yes, I guess you said Halim, right? I hope I didn't misheard you. Well, I think it was an awfully successful event. As organizers, our actually apologies for the overlook that the portal had a maximum of 100 connections. I believe very many people couldn't attend. It is unfortunate on one end, but it is also showing the great interest in this area. I am very happy to observe that. The next edition will be next week, part 2 of this event, and we will make sure that the portal will have 300 connections this time. I would like to thank to all organizers. This is the first of our events in satellite communications and networking. More will follow in the fall semester. And also, I believe the video of today's event will be available. So stay tuned, and I will pass it to Güneş.
I'd like to thank everyone who has attended this interesting session, especially to our presenters. And Weijie, it was a pleasure organizing this event with you. I'm looking forward to the next edition on July 26th. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Bye.
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 See you next week.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. See you.